Since 2003, this is The Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Junk Be Gone, Phoenix Conversions.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. Hope you had a good Christmas. Hope you have a good New Year's coming up. We are the morsel in between, and we have a little bit of basketball to talk about right off the top, but this is our Gator Bowl preview. You're going to leave this game knowing more about Indiana than most Indiana fans know. Should be a jam-packed show, so let's get right into it and not waste any of that jam-packedness. First segment brought to you by Phoenix Conversions. If you work out of your van or your truck and need the biggest selection of racks, shelving, sliding cargo trays, give Phoenix Conversions a call or stop by their showroom. Whether you have one truck or 100 in your fleet, they are the team to trust. They have been since 1987. PhoenixConversions.com to learn more. All right, to learn more about the Tennessee basketball debacle yesterday, I brought in these three fellows right here. We have Josh Ward, we have Mike Strange, we have Chuck Cavaleris. Thanks to one and all for being here. Let's get right into the Badger beatdown and just put up the numbers for you. For those of you who haven't looked at them, it was ugly. Tennessee only scored 47 against Memphis at home a couple weeks ago. They get 48 at home against Wisconsin yesterday. Shot 34% from the field, 33% from three-point range, 12 assists but had 17 turnovers. Bowden, who without Lamonte Turner, you're thinking, okay, who's going to step up? Who's going to be the go-to shooter? Bowden, 37 minutes, 7 points on 2 of 13 shooting. You're thinking, okay, now you're going to have to put more pressure on the freshman five-star Josiah Jordan-James, 32 minutes, 4 points, 1 of 6 shooting. You can argue, as Rick Barnes did after the game, that it wasn't Lamonte Turner. That wasn't the reason we didn't play well. Okay, they haven't scored well with him either. Got it. I think that's also a coach telling his team, you're good enough, you better do it. Because if you sit there and say, without Lamonte, then they're going to pack it in. So part of that's coach speak. Scoring or not, I didn't see a leader yesterday. And that's one thing that Lamonte Turner had been. When the chips were down, they just hung their heads, and it didn't get any better. I wonder where this team is going to go, not only for finding baskets, if they can hit easy baskets, where they're going to find their baskets, but where they're going to go for leadership. Your thoughts on yesterday's beatdown?
Yeah, it looked like a team that's lost its way, right? And I think for a number of reasons, leadership probably is where you would start, and production on the floor as well. We're going to get to that with names and numbers that will show you what's missing, and Lamonte is the latest in that. And that is leadership that Rick Barnes has talked about a lot. And his message in what the players who are now playing will have to do is it's a good one. Hey, it's your turn. Yeah. And I do think that Josiah Jordan-James is going to get better, but he looked like a guy that's not comfortable yet in what he's supposed to do, not comfortable shooting. And that probably applies to all the freshmen who now all have to step up.
When you're down to 8 players, everybody's got to step up. And I don't recall a Tennessee team being down to 8 players. It'll be 9 with the addition of Vescovi. But, we were talking about there's 2 recruiting classes, back-to-back recruiting classes, and East Ponds is the only guy left from those 2 classes. You've had transfers and
guys that didn't pan out.
Guys that didn't pan out, and that may be why they transferred. But anyway, it's just I don't know where the leadership is going to come from, if not Jordan Bowden.
To me, your best player so far has been John Fulkerson, and he's been your most consistent player. So, I mean, that's somebody there. But, you're talking about Jordan Bowden. The disturbing thing to me, and listening to some of Coach Barnes' post-game comments, how this team lacks confidence. And you're playing at home. What happens when you go on the road?
Of course, they did get booed at home by a few fans.
Yeah, but that was just a spattering and briefly.
Don't boo your own team. Stupid.
But, I mean, and John, you're talking about where to get points. I've talked to several people that Tennessee gets absolutely nothing out of the transition game. If you're going to be shooting 35% from the field as a pretty good game, you got to find a way to get some easy buckets. And it's like the Coach Barnes style is half-court offense inside out. And to me, you've got to find a way to get some easy buckets.
And even when they got in position for some easy buckets yesterday, they just didn't fall. And part of that's just basketball. Some days you're hot, some days you're cold. But this team has had such problems putting the ball in the hoop all year. Now, you can argue that Lamonte Turner hasn't been that much of a difference because he hasn't looked like himself shooting. But without him, you also lose to Virginia Commonwealth. They're on a run right now against good quality foes where that's basically your lone win. Florida State, Cincinnati, Memphis, Wisconsin, all losses, and Virginia Commonwealth would have been if not for Lamonte Turner's buzzer beater. Let's take a look. We referenced it earlier. What they're missing. All right, let's put this in perspective for anybody out there that wants to boo. This is what's missing from last year. Grant Williams, Admiral Schofield, Jordan Bone, all to the NBA. Kyle Alexander, Lamonte Turner now out. You see their averages. Okay, 67 points, 26 rebounds, and 15 assists per game are gone. Now, I don't know many programs that are going to handle that well.
That's last year's starting lineup.
Yeah, so basically you had Bowden and Turner kind of flip-flopping in there. But, yes, that's your top 5 guys plus Bowden, and Bowden's the only guy remaining. That is just a lot to overcome for a program that is only now starting to recruit. You know, we've seen Rick Barnes really pick it up here this last 2 classes. They've lost the guys in the transfers. You've lost all that. I don't think it's a surprise, especially, and I would expect, and we mentioned this last week, you just lose Lamonte Turner. I would have guessed that playing a seasoned program like Wisconsin would probably be the worst-looking game you're going to have. I don't know how much better they're going to get because look at the schedule, but I do think Wisconsin, it's going to get worse before it gets better, I think. Here's what you got coming up in January. This is not an easy schedule either. You got LSU right out of the gate in the SEC. At Kansas, sitting there at the end of the month in that SEC Big 12 Challenge. Guys, can this team get it together? Figure out an attack, a plan of attack, get better on the defensive end, because that hasn't looked great either. Can they figure this out in time to make a February, March run? Because, I don't want to underestimate Rick Barnes. He may prove me wrong, and I'll be happy to eat it if he does. I look at January, I think it's a lost month. I think you're going to be trying to keep your head above water and figure something out. My question is, can they figure something out by February or March? And I have my doubts.
Well, I think they'll get better. I think they'll figure some things out. But to me, the February schedule is harder than the January schedule. So you might get better, and it's not necessarily going to show up in terms of improving your status.
And remember when we said this team will go as far as the guard play will take it? You know, how do you feel about that now? Yeah. I think you're looking at, and somebody told me this, Tennessee might have been at least slightly overrated when they had Turner and everybody else. Now you look at them and it's like, is this even a 500 basketball team? It's going to be a struggle.
I know on this show, I know that most everyone said it was a bubble team to begin with. Maybe that's overrated. There were plenty of people saying, oh, no, it's an NCAA tournament team, definitely. And that was overrating it. I think they were a bubble team at best. I don't think that anymore. I don't think you're getting into the tournament. I think you might be aiming for the NIT this year.
Yeah, and something you mentioned there a moment ago, I don't think it's gotten enough attention over the last week or so, is the defensive side. Because going into the season, I think in the first several weeks of the season, we looked at it and said they've got to play really good defense every night. And against Cincinnati, Tennessee didn't. Rick Barnes was concerned about that. Lamonte's a big part of them playing good defense. What if you deal with another injury? We talked about the numbers. So there's just a lot to overcome that they have to figure out very quickly heading into conference play.
The effort can be there, but it's like Tennessee leaves three-point shooters wide open. And then sometimes even when the shot clock's really winding down, like, 3 seconds it happened a couple of times, there's a foul or something. But I don't understand how this team leaves so many three-point shooters wide open.
It could be because of your 8 players, 4 true freshmen.
Yeah, and Devontae Gaines got the start yesterday, and credit him for being thrown to the wolves. There were times where you saw some promise there, and if you look at Barnes' history, you would expect these guys to get better. You expect improvement, but it is an awful lot to ask when you've got an 8-man roster at the moment, and half of them are newcomers. Yeah. That's tough.
It is,
and I don't feel good for. Santiago Vescovi having to come in here too, because the expectations on him now are get in there and play. And he's not just coming from high school; he's coming from Australia and Uruguay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what he'll be ready for right off the bat.
Well, it's also that those guys you just showed, they left behind a program that had been elevated to where big picture expectations are higher, right?
Yes.
And now you have young players who are trying to keep up to that. And long term, I think there's still plenty to be positive about what the current players can become. and then the 2020 signing class, what it will be when those guys arrive next year. But that doesn't help you right now. So short term, I think you have real concerns. Long term, still plenty of reasons to be optimistic.
We said all summer when the schedule was coming out bit by bit, Rick Barnes almost leaves. He gets the raise. He's having all this turnover. He's lost these guys. Then you lose Turner. You've got this schedule. You're playing perennial NCAA teams week after week. We said all summer, this is kind of a worst case scenario for Rick Barnes. And now that you've lost Turner and you're continuing to lose bodies, it's a worst case for Rick Barnes. All right, that's it for basketball. When we come back, we are diving headfirst into the Gator Bowl. Tons of Tennessee, Indiana information, thoughts, opinions, facts, figures. It's all coming your way. Come on back on the Sports Source.